Sign this paper. Uncle Silas is paying $500 for you. That is exactly enough for the flat-screen TV I want. My mother shoved the clipboard into my chest, blocking the doorway so I could not come inside. I was 13 years old, shivering next to a suitcase, and she was trading me for electronics. She sneered, "You finally have a purpose, Carlin. Buying me something nice." I looked past her shoulder at the empty spot on the living room wall where the television would go. I did not cry. I took the pen, signed the guardianship transfer, and turned around. As I walked away, I realized the truth. My price tag was exactly $500. 15 years later, the girl who shivered in the snow was gone. In her place stood a 29-year-old senior compliance officer for a private trust firm. My job description is simple. I hunt liars. I scan thousands of pages of financial data to find the single discrepancy that proves fraud. I do not need intuition, I need logic. I do not need to guess, I need to verify. Uncle Silas did not raise me with bedtime stories or warm hugs. He raised me with hard lessons and cold facts. He was a cynical man who viewed the world as a series of transactions. He used to sit in his library, tapping a lit cigar against a crystal ashtray, and tell me, "Carlin, tears are useless. Emotions are expensive. But receipts? Receipts are free. Keep them all." I took that advice to heart. While I was building a career based on precision and law, my biological parents were building a life based on performance and theft. They assumed I had vanished into the foster system or died on the streets. That assumption made them arrogant. For 15 years they played the grieving parents on local television. I have a digital folder on my secure server labeled, "The Performance." It contains dozens of clips. Every year on the anniversary of the blizzard, Caroline would stand on that same porch, wearing black, weeping into a news microphone. She would tell the reporters that her troubled daughter ran away in a psychotic break. She would beg the community for prayers and support. And the community provided. I watched from a distance as they accepted donations to a fake search fund. I watched Austin buy a new truck with money meant to print missing person flyers. I watched them renovate their kitchen with sympathy cash. They turned my absence into a steady paycheck. But the donations were just the surface. The real crime was buried in the paperwork. Because they thought I was gone forever, they never removed me from their government filings. For 15 years, Austin and Caroline claimed me as a dependent on their federal tax returns. They collected state welfare benefits, housing assistance, and food stipends for a child who did not live there. They cashed monthly checks from the government totaling $180,000 over a decade and a half. They committed federal wire fraud and tax evasion every single year, confident that no one would ever check the records of a runaway ghost. They did not know that the ghost grew up to be an auditor. I did not stop them. I did not send a cease and desist letter. I let them do it. I let them cash every single check. I let them lie on every single form. I treated their crimes like a savings account that was accruing interest. Every time Caroline cried on television, I saved the video. Every time Austin filed a fraudulent tax return, I downloaded the public record. They thought they were getting away with it. They did not realize that I was keeping a mental ledger, and I was waiting for the perfect moment to balance the books. Uncle Silas died on a rainy Tuesday in November. He left the world exactly as he lived in it, quietly and without debt. He also left a last will and testament that bequeathed his entire estate to me. The assets included a prime commercial building downtown, a diversified stock portfolio, and liquid cash. The total value was $12,500,000. The will was sealed for 30 days, a standard legal procedure. But grief does not stop greed. My biological parents smelled the money the way sharks smell blood in the water. They did not come to the funeral. They did not send a card. Instead, 48 hours after the obituary was published, they hired a lawyer. His name was Mr. Blight, a man whose billboards promised to fight for the little guy but mostly just fought for a percentage of the settlement. They filed a motion to contest the will based on familial bonds. They claimed that as my natural parents, they were entitled to the estate and that I had used undue influence to manipulate a senile old man. Then they took their campaign to the media. I sat in my office with the lights off, watching the local evening news. There was Caroline sitting on that same porch where she had abandoned me, clutching a tissue. The reporter asked her about the inheritance. Caroline looked into the camera, her eyes wet with practiced tears, and said, "We are not interested in the money. We just want to protect our daughter's soul. He was a troubled child. She brainwashed my poor brother in his final days. We just want to bring the family back together and manage the estate responsibly." It was a masterclass in manipulation. She was painting herself as the saint and me as the predator. My phone began to ring. It was my lawyer, furious. He wanted to file a defamation suit immediately. He wanted to release a statement. He wanted to go to war. I told him to stop. There is a quote by Sun Tzu that Uncle Silas made me memorize when I was 16. Never interrupt your enemy when he is making a mistake. If I sued them now, it would just be a messy civil dispute. It would be my word against theirs. It would drag on for years. But if I stayed silent, if I let them believe their own lies, they would get careless. They would get greedy. And eventually they would put those lies in writing. I needed them to commit to their story under penalty of perjury. I needed them to walk into a trap they could not escape. I took a breath and gave my lawyer new instructions. Do not fight them, I said. I want you to call Mr. Blight. Sound terrified. Tell him I am crumbling under the pressure. Tell him I want to settle this privately because I cannot handle the public scrutiny. Offer them a mediation session. My lawyer thought I was crazy. He told me we had a winning case. He did not understand that I was not trying to win a case. I was trying to secure a conviction. I was baiting the hook with the one thing they could not resist. The illusion of my weakness. They thought they were bullying a scared little girl. They did not know they were walking into a room with a compliance officer who had spent 15 years building a cage specifically for them. The mediation was scheduled for Friday morning. I had 48 hours to prepare my arsenal. I did not need to hack into a server or decrypt a password. Uncle Silas did not trust the cloud. He did not trust digital banking. He trusted steel. I walked into his home office, a room that still smelled of cedar and cigar smoke. Behind his desk sat a heavy, fireproof safe bolted to the floor. I dialed the combination from memory. It was the date I graduated from college. The tumblers clicked, a heavy, mechanical sound that felt like a gavel coming down. I pulled the handle and the heavy door swung open. Inside, stacked neatly among deeds and bonds, was a single red accordion folder. I pulled it out. It was heavy. It felt like holding a grenade with the pin pulled halfway out. I sat at the desk and opened it. Inside lay the physical proof of my parents' crimes, preserved in plastic sleeves. First I pulled out the disc. It was an old DVD-R, the kind with a purple underside that scratches if you look at it wrong. On the front, in Silas's sharp, angular handwriting, it said simply, Christmas 2010. Silas had installed a security camera on his porch years before it was common. He was paranoid about package thieves. He ended up catching child traffickers. I held the disc up to the light. It contained the video footage of Caroline handing me the clipboard and watching me walk into the storm. It was the only copy in existence. Next, I removed the financial trail. Paper clips had rusted slightly over 15 years, leaving small orange marks on the documents. The top paper was a cash check from Silas's personal account. The amount was written in bold black ink. $500. The memo line read, Final payment for Carlin. It was brutal in its directness. But stapled to the back of the check was the detail that made it unforgivable. It was a store receipt from Best Buy, dated December 26, 2 days after I was evicted. It listed a single item, Samsung 32-inch LCD television. The price was $499. They had not even waited a week to spend me. Finally, I pulled out the stack of tax returns. These were public records, easy enough to request if you knew what to look for, but seeing them printed out was different. Form 1040 after Form 1040 spanning 15 years. On every single one, under the section for dependents, were the names of 2 children. Victoria and Carlin. They had claimed the child tax credit for a daughter they had sold. They had claimed head of household status based on a lie. They had signed their names at the bottom of each page, declaring under penalty of perjury that the information was true. I placed the documents back into the folder. I did not feel sad looking at them. I felt the cold, hard satisfaction of a hunter checking her traps. I reached into my bag and pulled out an external USB DVD drive. Modern conference rooms are sleek and digital. They do not have slots for 15-year-old discs. I had to bring my own hardware. Uncle Silas kept old tech for old sins. I packed the drive. I packed the folder. I clicked the briefcase shut. The silence in the room was heavy, but it was not empty. It was waiting. I was ready. The mediation took place in a glass-walled conference room on the 42nd floor of a downtown high-rise. The air conditioning was set to 68 degrees, cold enough to make you shiver if you were not expecting it. In the corner of the ceiling, a small red light blinked on the security camera. It was a standard feature for legal depositions, designed to create an objective record. Today it was the most dangerous thing in the room. I arrived first. I sat on the far side of the mahogany table, my hands folded on top of the closed red folder. I wore a simple gray suit, the kind of outfit that makes you blend into the background. When the elevator doors opened, my biological family stepped out. They were dressed in black, A coordinated performance of mourning for a brother they had ignored for 20 years. Caroline led the way, her chin high, looking around the opulent office with hungry eyes. Austin shuffled behind her, looking nervous but eager. Victoria brought up the rear, checking her reflection in the glass, complaining loudly about the price of valet parking. They saw me sitting there, but they did not see a threat. They saw the frightened 13-year-old they had thrown away. Caroline breezed past me without a greeting, dropping her designer bag on the table with a heavy thud. She looked at my lawyer and said, "Let us get this over with. We have reservations for lunch." He did not even look at me. To her, I was just a signature standing between her and $12 million. Grace, my lawyer, shark smile and all, slid one document across the table. "Standard kinship verification affidavit," she said. "Because the will is being contested, the executor needs a sworn statement that you maintained a continuous parental relationship with the beneficiary from 2010 to today. Sign it and the funds can be released." It was bait. Perfect bait. Their attorney, Mr. Blight, sweaty, cheap suit but not clueless, read the fine print and froze at paragraph 4. "This defines continuous care as uninterrupted financial and emotional support," he muttered. "Caroline, you told me she ran away. If you sign, you're swearing, under penalty of perjury, that she was in your care the entire time." He started to pull the paper back. "We shouldn't sign this. We need to amend the language." But Caroline's eyes were locked on the $12 million figure on the whiteboard. Greed anesthetizes instinct. She snatched the pen. "Stop billing me by the hour, Blight. Of course we raised her. She's my daughter. She had a rebellious phase. Don't complicate this." She stared at me hard and glittering. "You know the truth, Carlin. We did everything for you." I said nothing. I watched. Caroline signed with a flourish and shoved the affidavit at Austin. "Sign it." He hesitated, one flicker, one glance at Blight's pale face, then habit one. He signed. In that quiet, the room changed. They thought they'd secured a fortune. They didn't realize they'd just signed a confession, 15 years of care, which made every welfare check and tax deduction they'd claimed in my name undeniable fraud, confirmed by their own hand. Caroline capped the pen and pushed the affidavit toward me, smug. "There. Now give us our money." "We'll get to the money," I said, placing my palm on a red folder. "First, we review the receipts." Caroline leaned forward, all false sweetness, sliding the signed paper across the mahogany like an all-in poker move. "We signed your little paper. Now pay us. We've suffered enough." I didn't touch the affidavit. I opened the red folder and pulled out a clunky external disk drive. I plugged it into my laptop, connected HDMI to the projector and typed the password. "What are you doing?" Austin's voice wobbled. "Where's the check?" I didn't look up. Uncle Silas kept old tech for old sins. The screen flickered to life, grainy black and white security footage. Timestamp: December 24, 2010, 6:42 p.m. A snowy porch from a high angle. Caroline Younger, clipboard in hand. And a small figure beside a suitcase. Me. No audio, none needed. Caroline shoved the clipboard at the child. The child signed. Caroline pointed to the driveway and slammed the door. The child walked into the whiteout. Caroline shot up. "Turn that off. This is private." "Sit down," I said, quiet and final. "I'm not finished." I placed a cash check beside the affidavit. "Do you recognize this?" Her signature was on the back. Amount: $500. "You told the media you lost me," I said evenly. "You said I ran away. You didn't lose me, Caroline. You sold me." Then I laid down the receipt, faded thermal paper, still legible. Best Buy. Samsung 32-inch TV. $499. Dated 2 days after the check. "You didn't sell me to survive," I said, meeting her eyes. "You sold me for a television. Here's the receipt." Austin made a strangled sound and reached for the papers, shaking. Mr. Blight slammed a hand over his wrist, not protecting them anymore. Protecting his license. "And this affidavit?" I tapped their fresh signatures. "You just swore you raised me. Provided support for 15 years. I dropped a stack of tax returns on the table. "For 15 years, you claimed a missing child as a dependent. You collected $180,000 in benefits for a daughter you sold for $500. I leaned in. If you claim you raised me, you go to prison for welfare fraud and tax evasion. If you admit you sold me, you lose the inheritance and still go to prison for perjury and false filings. You didn't walk into a negotiation, Caroline. You walked into a crime scene. The silence was the sound of a trap snapping shut. We can fix this, she stammered. Carlin, baby. I didn't call the police, I said, standing. They're slow. I called the State Department of Human Services fraud unit an hour ago. They're waiting in the lobby. The doors hissed open. 2 men and a woman in dark windbreakers stepped in. State Fraud Unit in bold yellow letters. Caroline recoiled, chair screeching. No. I'm your mother. My mother died the night she chose a Samsung over her daughter, I said, calm and absolute. You're a defendant. The lead agent spoke. Caroline and Austin, you are under arrest for grand larceny and welfare fraud. Handcuffs clicked. Caroline wailed. Austin collapsed into silence as they were led out past the blinking camera. I gathered my things. Victoria, pale, frantic, rushed me, grabbing my arm. Wait. I didn't sign. You can't leave me with nothing. I removed her hand gently and firmly. You got a brand new car the day I got a snowstorm, I said. Sell it if you're hungry. At the shredder, I fed the Best Buy receipt into the blades. The last proof of my price tag became confetti. Then I walked out, down 42 floors and into the cold city air, finally weightless. If you believe blood doesn't make family, loyalty does. Subscribe. And tell me in the comments, what's the pettiest thing someone in your family ever did for money?